guys, Coach Brandon Krause here. Today, going to be talking about some nutrition, give you some basic ideas about how to go about a diet and your macronutrients and some of the terminology, all right? But before I even get started, I want to start with this caveat. At the end of this 4 or 5 minute YouTube clip, you're not going to have a degree in nutrition, all right? You're not going to be a registered dietitian. So this can help you start the discovery of this knowledge, but continue to educate yourself on that. And instead of relying on somebody to tell you specifically what to eat, try your best to take ownership of this knowledge so you know how to formulate it for yourself. Okay, well, that being said, let's go over some real basic things. When it comes to eating, when it comes to the calories you take in, first off, what is a calorie? A calorie is a unit of potential energy. Think about it that way. Specifically, it's the amount of energy necessary to heat 1 milliliter of 1 cubic milliliter of water 1 degree Celsius. That doesn't really mean too much to us, right? So think about it as energy, specifically. The energy for the demands of your day, for the demands of the ring, for the fight, and what have you. Recovery, repair, all that. Your macronutrients, the things that you eat, they can be divided into 3 subcategories. You have your carbs, carbohydrates, you got your fats, and you got your proteins. Carbs and proteins, those are going to run you about 4 calories a gram. Fat, though, fat is very dense with energy, and that is your body's stored energy, and that's going to be 9 calories a gram. So a lot more fat, and that's why fat, that's why everybody tries to stay away from fat and why people try to eliminate out of their diet, because it is so calorie dense. Also, right off the bat, stop thinking about those macronutrients as being inherently good or bad. Food is just food, all right? Food is not good or bad. It depends on how you use it or how you overuse it. The caveat of that being processed food. Processed food, fucking poison. Stay away from it. But as far as your carbs, fats, and proteins, you want to formulate a way for them to fit within your total diet, all right? So let me just, for argument's sake, let's say Joe Schmo has a 3,000 calorie requirement for his day. And what he does is he breaks a third of those carbs into carbs, a third of those calories into fats, a third of those calories into protein, all right? Kind of like I have here. And he can go about that a number of different ways, right? So he could eat a balanced diet consisting of those macros in every single meal, which I actually recommend, somewhat of a zone-style diet, right? And then at the end of the day, he can have 3, 4, 5 meals consisting of that and meet his requirements for the 3,000 calories. Look, Joe Schmo can do a whole different strategy. Let's say he really was craving a chocolate shake or something like that. And he goes in one meal, he has 1,000 calories of fat. It doesn't mean that chocolate shake was bad necessarily. It just means that he doesn't have room anywhere else in his day for more fat. So that was such a calorie-dense meal decision that he made that now he basically cannot have any more fat in his diet throughout the day to meet his requirements. So that's not necessarily a good strategy. But we're human beings and we do those type of things. And as far as like specific, a certain zone style, Atkins style, what have you, these specific methodologies of taking in your macros, that's not as important as your overall calorie count. When they do the studies on these diets and they see the success or not of them, it really has to do with the overall calories as opposed to how those macronutrients broke down, all right? Like I said, stay away from processed food, all right? For the most part, if you order something and a minute later it's ready, you want to stay away from it. Well, unless it's tacos, then order another taco in that case. But the protein, your body's primary source of energy is going to come from those fats, and that's why it is so calorie dense. And most of your day-to-day operations, most of your recovery, repair is going to be powered by fat. And it's a very plentiful way to supply you of energy, but it's a very slow way also, right? It's not localized. It's not. It has to be broken down from one part of your body, transported to the muscle of use, and then reintroduced to that muscle. And this is a process that takes a lot of time. It can be They're in the acute in the forms of carbohydrates, or basically sugar, right? So the most basic part of a carbohydrate is going to be a glucose molecule, or to us, sugar. And that is stored specifically in the muscle groups of use. So in a high intensity situation, carbohydrates are going to be your go-to. So don't be afraid of carbs, especially if you're an athlete, especially if you're training hard. Have no fear of carbs. Just know when you've had too much, much like anything else. Protein can be used for energy, but this is not your body's preferred way to do it. In times of starvation or something like that, it will happen. You'll start to eat away at your muscle, hypertrophy, things like that. You want to try to avoid that as much as possible. You want to try to keep your lean muscle mass on you to every extent possible, okay? So the typical athlete ranges in so much degree as far as their height, size, muscle mass, and absolute calorie demands, and I couldn't say to you, oh, shoot for 3,000 calories a day. Oh, shoot for 2,200 calories a day. It's too broad to be specific to the athlete. So that's why I'm really stressing to you, take your knowledge to another level, okay? But we do have here that you have your macronutrients, your carbs, 4 calories, proteins, 4 calories, fat calories. And then how you set up your basic mesocycle kind of will dictate how you go about these strategies for your diet. Entering, training, getting ready to train at a high intensity thing. Carb loading, it is a beneficial thing. Making sure that you're not depleted in carbs in any way, that you have these carbs available to use. And the more carbs that you eat, your body is smart and economic. It utilizes these carbs better. But that same is true if you eliminate carbs and start having a diet more rich in protein and fat. After a while, after a miserable while, your body will get used to not having the carbs and start utilizing fat and protein more for those energy sources. But like I said, it's just never going to be a quick use of that energy. You'll find that people that do well on those type of diets are more of the longer term endurance athletes, marathoners, ultra distance runners, things like that. That slow and sustain really works. But us boxers that have high intensity interactions in that ring at the blink of an eye, having carbohydrates available and useful is advantageous. Don't be afraid of that cheat meal. Don't be afraid to be human every now and then. A strategy that I was taught many years ago was the 80-20 rule. 80% of the time you try to be flawless in how you go about your diet and be very strict. But 20% of the time you're a human being, all right? My 20% of the time is usually filled by beer, but hey, I'm a human being too. All right, well, that's nor here nor there, all right? The carbohydrate to start the training cycle is a good way, right? And then the carbohydrate to replenish you after an intense training is also a beneficial thing. There is a thing that I was taught in school that people are kind of getting in ways that they call the anaerobic window. And as you start to train at a certain amount of time, given a certain intensity, your body starts to kick in its endocrine system in a positive way. The number of your anaerobic hormones raise. And when you have these high level of anaerobic hormones, like if you were taking steroids or something like that, your body is going to use those calories much more for the sake of growth and repair rather than storage. And that's what everyone wants, right? Everybody wants to have a lean muscle mass and recover from their training, but everybody doesn't want a big thick layer of fat around their body, You gotta think though, evolutionarily, your body wants to have a little bit of fat on it. It wants to have these calories available because back in, thousands of years ago, you didn't know when your next calories were coming, so it was part of survival to have some calories available in those times of famine and starvation. But this is 2021, and we know that our next meal is coming the second we go to our refrigerator, and we don't need to worry about that anymore. So we can be much more extreme in terms of keeping a low body fat percentage and really having our carbs, fats, and proteins based out specifically for the day or the week ahead of us and not have to think about many days in the African Serengeti where we'll never get calories again. So we don't have to worry about that, all right? You have your micronutrients too. This is going to be all your vitamins, minerals, things of that nature. And these are all very important, and there's different theories on how supplementing and having more or less of these can help you in certain ways. I'm not going to get into that, right? But I will tell you, you don't want to be deficient in any of your micronutrients. So if you feel like you're not eating a well-balanced diet and have plenty of leafy greens, fresh fruits and vegetables, you may want to look into some sort of vitamin supplement or something like that to help you with that deficiency. Research on your own, though, to see. There seems to be every year they're talking about one of these micronutrients being more beneficial than the other. Sometimes I'll call bullshit on it, but there is something to be said for it, all right? The gist of it and how you really want to base things is you want to have a diet with sufficient lean protein and fat. Don't forget about fat. Fat is an integral part of your diet. It is required in many of the processes of your diet. So don't want to eliminate fat. And then you want to have a diet also rich in nutrient-dense foods like fruits and vegetables, and especially dark leafy greens. So you're not going to get much calories out of this food, but the calories that you do get are going to be jam-packed full of nutrients. And that's what I mean when I say nutrient-dense. Also, you want to have the fiber count because you need to have things pushing through you, right? You want to have the waste eliminated, and that's going to be more so for the longevity of your life. I mean, here in the United States, prostate cancer and colon cancer is one of the major leading causes of death. So you definitely want to have that shit pushing through and not taking a pit stop, anywhere in your intestine. So have your fiber count sufficient as well. What goes into that also is having enough water to push that through, because that fiber without the aid of water is going to get bunched up itself. So as long as you have a sufficient amount of H2O that's pushing it through, and H2O that's calorie free, by the way, it really help you stay regular, which is an important thing, honestly. There are certain recommendations. When I was in school, and this has changed a little bit, that an athlete should have 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight. And that's a good go-to, right? It's a little hard to do that math in your head, so you can almost think a gram of protein per pound of body weight, which is maybe a little excessive, but people often undershoot what they're eating anyway, okay? And yeah, like I said, stay away from all the processed stuff. If it comes out of a package, if you can buy it out of a McDonald's drive-thru or something like that, it's probably not going to be very beneficial to you. It's probably going to be poor calories and not help you in your terms of performance in the way that I'm sure you're tuning in for, all right? I'd be interested to hear any other questions you have more specifically about it, so I can come up with a new video answering those. But I think these are some good pieces of information to help you start that journey of building a diet. Here's another thing. What diet? I'm on a diet. The word diet just means what you eat. If all I ate was candy bars all day long, that would be my diet. So the word diet in and of itself doesn't mean anything. It's how you formulate how you're going to take in those macros, where they're going to fit your specific needs, and that you're not putting on excess calories and you're not starting to put on that layer of fat, which is stored energy in terms of how your body thinks about it, all right? Hope you like it, and shoot me those questions in the comment section. Like and subscribe.